Hi, welcome to the Rittners Floral School in Boston, Mass. I'm Dr. Steve Rittner, and it's a pleasure to welcome you into one of our classrooms today. The time of the year, St. Patrick's Day. And here in Boston, St. Patrick's Day is an important holiday, and we thought that it would be kind of fun to show you a few tricks relating to floral art for St. Patrick's Day. Now, the first thing that we have to consider is our container. Obviously, when we're dealing with St. Patrick's Day, the colors are green, and of course the achromatic white. And we have to come up with a container, and there's so many great containers that we can choose from to bring about floral art for this holiday. Let me give you an example. You have out here a very, very lovely container. We're going with a classical container that's in a very, very pretty shade of green, but we also have other things. We could go with something like this that has more of a moss kind of finish to it, a moss green. We could go with something that feels more like spring in terms of a watering can that has the particular kind of color motif for this particular holiday. We don't have to go with green, we could go with white. Here is a very, very pretty container. Again, a little more classical in feeling. It happens to be an inexpensive container, a plastic one, but it gives a ceramic effect that is almost like a pearlescent white, so that we can go in many, many different directions in choosing our bases. We could also go with glassware, and we could do things to our glassware to make it feel St. Patrick-y. For example, in this particular case, we've got a cube or a rectangle of glass, and we've got some deco beads in it that we could work either directly in or put foam on. So there are a variety of different possibilities in terms of starting points, and depending upon your particular tastes, what you happen to have around you, and the kind of psychological effect you'd like to get, you can go in many, many different directions. Now, in terms of flowers, we have some amazing flowers available to us. We can go with things that are more like face flowers, such as our hydrangea. And hydrangea, nowadays, we can not only get them in white, but we can get them in different varieties of green. I love these mint green, smaller ones, as well as the big white ones. We could go in the direction of our carnations or our mini carnations. For example, not only do we have the tinted or dyed flowers today, but we also have flowers that have been developed that give a very, very lovely, subtle green kind of color. So we could go in that direction in our designing. But out of all the different ways that we can go in terms of our St. Patrick's Day designing, in terms of green flowers, one of my favorites, and the one that I'd like to share with you today, is the use of Bells of Ireland. Bells of Ireland Moluccella. It is an amazing flower. This flower is available throughout the year, but the color works really well for our greens on St. Patrick's Day. And also, it's very, very showy. It's big, it's showy. You sometimes get amazing curves on it. You can break it down. A lot of people aren't aware that 99% of what we're looking at here really isn't the flower. It's actually the foliage of the flower, or the calyx of the flower. The flower of the Bells of Ireland is really this little white thing right in here. But we generally call the whole thing a flower, even though most of this really is foliage and leaves. It's really an amazing flower. It has a lovely scent to it. And this can be a very, very potent secret weapon in doing Bells of Ireland designing, because you can get some really neat things out of it. To condition, make sure you remove the foliage, cut the stems, put it in warm water and preservative. Give it a good hydration before you use it, because it does like water. And I think that you're going to find that in using these Bells of Ireland today, we can come up with some really, really cool effects in our designing. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by showing you guys a little trick. We can take the Bells of Ireland and we could use it, but we can also break it down. Notice that by taking it and breaking it, we can make it into really several pieces. And that is kind of a neat thing, because if I can take a flower and get more coverage out of it because I've broken it down, I can do some very, very neat things. I can get more coverage out of it. It gives me more flexibility. And that's exactly how I'm going to start my design. Notice I've got a piece over there. Now you may wonder, Dr. Steve, normally you kind of start up high, you kind of start in the middle like this or whatever. You're doing it at kind of a weird angle, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm going to start off in a little bit different way in terms of my designing. I'm going to take one slightly over here, And this is not going to be a tiny design. As you can see, I'm starting this one off fairly large in terms of my placement. And again, I can make use of the fact that I was able to break this down. I can take this piece that originally derived from this and work this one kind of here over towards the middle. So we can do some pretty cool things with these bells. That's why I like this particular flower. It is a flower that you can take, you can cut down, you can do some really amazing things with it from a design point of view, and it doesn't require a whole lot of effort to do it. And that's the neat thing. I'm going to take another flower, another one of my bells of Ireland, and I'm going to cut it down, again, taking it and breaking it into pieces so that I can take these pieces and I can start designing with them and doing different things with them. And I'm going to do a cool illusion, I've got something coming over here. Why don't we take this piece and have it coming over here so it almost feels like it could be part of this or part of this one, depending upon how you want to look at it. It gives a really cool effect, doesn't it? So we can play games with this particular flower. We can take it, we can break it down, and not only can we break it down, but we can kind of angle it out so that one feels like it's part of the other. It really isn't, but it feels like that. I'm going to do this again. I'm going to take another piece and I'm going to angle it over here. Now that's going to complicate it even more because it feels like this is coming down over like here. It also means that I've got a piece that's kind of coming out at us to give us a three-dimensional kind of an effect on our design. Now that's pretty interesting. Now I'm going to take some of my other sections that I have here. I had one section that I cut off of this one. I'm going to take this and I'm going to work this in as well. So you can do some really, really interesting things using your bells of Ireland on these. And I'm going to take another little piece of my bells of Ireland and I'm going to place it right over on this side here. So notice how I'm building around the edges of the design. But there's something, my viewer, that probably is bothering you. First of all, the design feels a bit short. We've got a nice container here that's fairly big. We've got bells that are really shooting out over here and over here and here. But the design itself feels a little bit small. Well, I'm going to remedy that. And to remedy it, I'm going to go to something I always like to play with, branchy stuff. We've got some great curly willow here. And I'm going to take my curly willow, and you're going to be amazed, my viewer, at what's going to happen with this. My curly willow is going to provide me the height on this design. And notice, my viewer, as you look at it, now what seemed to be fairly small in terms of our height is definitely coming up much, much taller. Notice how this is coming up really, really much taller. And that kind of gives a counterpoint. So that where you thought that this was fairly small in here, it's not small, but it wasn't coming up high, I've got this. Could I have started with this? Sure. But the thing that I'm trying to stress to you, my viewer, on this design today is the fact that we are making use of the concept of using our bells of Ireland to come up with some really, really cool effects. Now, let's take a few other things and work it with it. So far, we've got something that's pretty green. Let's take some white flowers and work them in. And I am going to work some white flowers into our mix. I have some miniature carnations. And I'm going to take some of my white minis and I'm going to create a line working down here. Oh, you guys are going to love this one. The thing I like about this kind of styling is you can come up with some very impressive effects on these, but you don't have to work excessively hard to do it. And to me, anything that is quick and easy and fun really reflects some of the cool things that you can do in floral art and come up with some really nice effects on it. So notice that I'm working a line of my mini carnations gradually coming in here with my minis. I'm going to take a few more of my white minis and I'm going to work them down here. And then I'm going to do something else with my minis too. I'm going to take my mini carnations and I'm going to gradually angle them over here. So I'm going to take a few more of my mini carnations, place them out over here, gradually coming in towards an angled slice there, so that I'm coming up with a really, really interesting kind of effect here with my minis. I'm going to add a few more right over here as well, so that I have mini carnations that are starting up here and then just gradually coming over to one side. Now that's a little bit different. Now, what else can we do? Well, I did show you when we started this video, my viewer, some other flowers like our hydrangea. I love hydrangea. I think that they are just an amazing flower, and it is, of course, a very, very popular flower at the present time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a hydrangea and I'm going to throw it over on one side. And normally we think in terms of a focal point being kind of smack dab in the middle, right where everything kind of comes together right here. I'm deliberately throwing it a little to one side to make this feel a little more asymmetric. It feels different, and the reason it feels different is that I'm using the weight here facing off in this direction, and I've got my mini carnations coming down over in this direction. Now, I could pretty much call it a day, finish off with my with either foliage or moss or something in terms of mechanics, but I'd like to do one more thing to this before I finish this design. Once again, I'm going to take some of my curly willow, and I'm going to add more. We used a little bit of curly willow initially to get the height here. I'm going to take a few more pieces of curly willow, and I have a container with my curly willow over here. I'm going to take a few more pieces of curly willow, cut them down, and I'm going to place it here. Notice I'm alternating it with my bells of Ireland. Now, if I have something here and here and here, I can also play on the other side, and that's exactly what I am going to do. I'm going to take some of my curly willow and play it. Now, I have a choice. I could go up here if I'd like, or I could come down here. I think I'm going to deliberately go with kind of a wild effect coming right over here on the side. But really, my viewer, you can play with this so many different ways in terms of doing it. So notice that it's bringing our eye out over here slightly. It gives us a little bit of wild kind of an effect in our design by doing that. So notice we've got something really, really interesting going on here, my viewer. This design is done in a classical base, but it doesn't feel classical. It feels a little bit weird, and that's deliberate. What we're doing here is we're making use of our design elements, but we're doing it in a different way. We've got something coming up tall. If we really analyze it, we've got something that is kind of an open triangle design here, but we're exaggerating, we're accentuating. We've got the bells of Ireland shooting out here, the bells of Ireland shooting here, shooting here. We are using a focal point idea, but we're angling it slightly to one side so it doesn't feel like a traditional design. It feels a little more asymmetric. And then we're playing with the linear element of our mini carnations, balancing off what we're doing here with our hydrangea. So now at this point in the design, we should, of course, cover our mechanics, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. We could do different things on covering our mechanics. We could add some of our foliage, but for the sake of brevity on this design where we are doing it as a quick video, I'm going to take some of my sheet moss, and using some hairpins of 20 wire, I'm just hairpinning it in so that way we've got our mechanics covered. I would, of course, continue this process of covering my mechanics on the sides and also on the back of my design as well, because it's considered good workmanship in our field to make sure all of our mechanics are covered. So notice, my viewer, we have a St. Patrick's Day design. It's big, it's showy. This is one you could put in an entry area, an entry hall. It's got a lot of negative space. It's a very, very contemporary feeling unit for a holiday that's been with us for a long time. Now, again, my comment on this is we are doing something with bells of Ireland. Let me show you a couple of other ideas, because this material is truly amazing. You can come up with some very, very large pieces and do it using this material, quick, easy, and fun to do. Let me show you a couple of other things before we stop, my viewer, just so that you can get a sense of this. Here is another design that I made up just before camera time using, again, our bells of Ireland. Similar kind of idea. The bells of Ireland create height here and here. We've got it in a boat-shaped container. We're making use of our mini carnations, bringing our line down right here, along here, over to one side, using our green hydrangea as a counterbalance here, some white Fujis here, a couple of pieces of anthurium foliage over on this side of the design. It gives a very, very pretty effect. But again, it's a little bit asymmetrical, so it feels a little bit wacky, a little bit different. And I think that the major thing on this one, we're also using, of course, our curly willow on this, but I think the major thing on this one that I want to stress is look at the use of the bells of Ireland. 2 pieces of bells of Ireland, look at how much space you can cover quickly and easily. And let me show you one last one, my viewer, before we stop, because I think you'll find this interesting in terms of our bells of Ireland. We could do something that could work in a platter design. And here is a little platter design, a small little platter. And we've got, again, the use of our bells of Ireland, shooting out here, shooting over here, coming over here in a little curve, making use of the pieces of bells of Ireland here, and a few of our mint green carnations here, a few daisy palms there, and obviously our hydrangea, our green hydrangea in the center, which gives a really, really cool effect. It's easy, it's fun. It's using the same ideas that we showed you a second ago. However, if we wanted to make it even fancier, taking a trumpet container with some of our green glass balls, placing our platter in here, and now we've got something that's very, very different if you think about it in terms of feeling. In other words, something that is, again, making use of the power of our bells of Ireland, but coming up with something that is a little bit more elaborate. So, my viewer, what do you think? Bells of Ireland, a wonderful tool that we can use when we're coming up with effects for St. Patrick's Day. We can come up with fairly big designs, big units, quick, easy, and fun, which of course is the Rittner Floral School way, quick, easy, and fun. On behalf of all of us here at Rittners Floral School, I'm Dr. Steve Rittner. We thank you for coming into our classroom today, and we hope you enjoyed this brief demonstration. Thank you.